We are at Sutton Hoo, one of the most important archaeological sites in England. It's on the southeast coast of England, near the River Deben. In 2009, a farmer found a treasure hoard of Anglo-Saxon artifacts in central England that may tell us even more about the Anglo-Saxon culture than what was found here at Sutton Hoo. But for now, the Sutton Hoo excavation is the primary source of information about the culture we see portrayed in Beowulf. People had known for a long time that the burial mounds, the barrows that you can see, were here. In fact, several of them had been looted at various times since the 7th century. In 1939, the first excavations were made, and archaeologists were astonished to find in what's known as Mound 1 an intact ship burial very much like the one described in the prologue of Beowulf.
In this excerpt from the prologue to Beowulf, notice the use of alliteration as well as the description of the ship burial. Forth he fared at the fated moment, sturdy shield to the shelter of God. Then they bore him over to ocean's billow, loving clansmen, as late he charged them while wielded words the winsome shield, the leader beloved who long had ruled. In the roadstead rocked a ring-dight vessel, ice-flecked, outbound, Aetheling's barge. There laid they down their darling lord on the breast of the boat, the breaker of rings, by the mast, the mighty one. Many a treasure fetched from far was freighted with him. No ship have I known so nobly dight, with weapons of war and weeds of battle, with breastplate and blade. On his bosom lay a heaped hoard that hence should go far o'er the flood with him, floating away.
Although in Beowulf the ship floated away out to sea, scholars believe that this particular ship burial, the one that was buried behind me, was dragged up from the Deben River, which is just over this hill, and buried intact here in the mound behind me. This seems to be a burial ground that was reserved for people of importance, people who were great leaders in the Anglo-Saxon culture. No one knows for sure who was buried in this ship burial, but the best guess is that it was Redwald, a Saxon king of East Anglia, who is mentioned by the Venerable Bede. These few artifacts are nearly all the evidence that remains of the second and most important invasion in the story of the English language, the Anglo-Saxon invasion. I'm in the Briitish Museum, and this is the Sutton Hoo exhibit. Archaeologists excavated these items from what's known as the Sutton Hoo ship burial on the east coast of England in 1938. Scholars were amazed to find that these objects and the boat itself matched the descriptions of ships and weapons found in Beowulf. Although from the Romans we can see Hadrian's Wall, remnants of villa floors with ornate mosaics, forts, public baths, modern roads still following the same paths laid out by the Romans, little remains of Anglo-Saxon society. In London, if you go into the lower level of a little church called All Hallows by the Tower, you'll see a single stone archway built by the Anglo-Saxons.
Throughout Britain are a few other bits of structures, mostly churches from the late Anglo-Saxon era. When the Anglo-Saxons came to Britain, they were a pagan warrior society. It's not surprising that many of the artifacts from the time period are swords or other weapons or pieces of armor. Other artifacts were items used in everyday life, such as this cooking pot that would have hung from the rafters in the Great Hall. Items such as this jewelry and these coins remind us of the dragon's hoard in Beowulf, or perhaps of the gift-giving motif in much Anglo-Saxon literature, in which the king gives treasures to his loyal retainers. Because the Anglo-Saxons were illiterate, they had no recorded literature, but they had a rich tradition of oral literature. At night in the mead hall, they passed a harp like this one around the tables, taking turns playing and chanting or singing stories about brave heroes and their superhuman deeds, stories like Beowulf. Although we have so few physical objects from the Anglo-Saxon culture, they left us the most important legacy of all, the English language.
Tuned in a what I believe is an Aeolian scale. It's kind of like a natural minor, but I find it, the more I experiment with it, the more I find that it works really well for the medieval music. And it starts out on a D. And that's kind of what it sounds like. And so I'm going to play a song for you called Bear Dance. It's a medieval tune. Normally, it was originally made for lute, but I find it works well on this. So here we go. There you have it, the Anglo-Saxon harpa.